That day, my cousin kicked me out of the company in front of the whole company. She took my husband's hand and condescendingly laughed at me. You can only be blamed for not being able to have children. With a wave of my hand, I annexed my husband's company. My cousin cried on her knees and begged me for mercy. I laughed softly. Sorry, my handsome and golden little boyfriend disagrees. At the company's celebration banquet, as a big contributor who just took a project, cousin Suzu nonchalantly sat on the main seat of the chairman's wife. I arrived a little late, and there was only one empty seat left for me at the main table, which happened to be in the corner. A few employees secretly looked askance at me and covered their mouths in whispers. This is a celebration banquet that Ki Yuanzhou has organized specifically for Suzu, and I am considered uninvited. The banquet officially started. Lin Tian saw me sitting forlornly in the corner, and gouged out Suzu, and bluntly said, "Mr. Qin, why are you sitting there?" Lin Tian was the patriarch who followed me and Ki Yuanzhou to fight together back then. I know that he was dissatisfied with Suzu riding on my head. The clamoring crowd instantly quieted. Suzu looked at me with her eyebrows raised in surprise. Yeah, sis, I'm sorry, I thought you weren't coming, why don't we switch?" Saying this, she slowly got up. Ki Yuanzhou pulled Suzu, and took out the faction of the boss. A seat is just a seat, where there is so much to care about. Just sit here. You are the main character today. When he said this, he didn't even bother to glance my way. Suzu smiled at me, her face almost blossoming. "Sister, then I'll sit here and take care of brother-in-law for you." I nodded bashfully, so she still knew that it was her brother-in-law. During the meeting, Suzu was pouring soup and vegetables into Ki Yuanzhou's bowl, pouring tea and water for him, almost reaching her chopsticks into his mouth. After the atmosphere was in place, a group of employees under Suzu's hand attentively raised their glasses to toast to her. Suzu looked embarrassed, blushingly excused herself, and, "Sorry guys, I can't drink right now." A week ago, she made a high-profile announcement in her circle of friends, 1 + 1 = 3. The accompanying picture was a photo of a man and a woman holding hands, and I recognized the man as Ki Yuanzhou without looking at his face. He used to fight with others for me and left a shallow scar on his little finger. That is the trace that he once loved me, and now it is also the proof that he does not love me. "Zhao Su, she can't drink, let me toast everyone." Ki Yuanzhou's high-pitched voice pulled me back from my thoughts. He cheerfully dried a few glasses of wine for Suzu. Suzu pouted and leaned on his shoulder, her lips opening and closing up and down as she whispered in his ear. I don't know what was said, but the two of them silently looked at each other and smiled. Maybe I was the joke, with such a high-profile act on their part. I still sat here, calmly watching them. I could clearly feel the employees around me casting sympathetic and puzzled glances at me. Not to mention the others, I myself felt ridiculous. When I accompanied Ki Yuanzhou when he started his business, he was not a good drinker, the kind that blushes when he dips into alcohol. I held my breath and said that I was not drunk from 1,000 cups and held back the wine for him. A few years later, he practiced his drinking ability and began to hold back drinks for others. Perhaps because she saw that I was indifferent to their lovemaking, Suzu held her cup and stopped in front of me with a condescending pace. "Sister, I sat in your seat today, and now I'm honoring you with water instead of wine, as a younger sister, making amends to you." She grinned and raised her cup towards me, saying it was an apology was more like a declaration of sovereignty. I glanced at her, lightly putting on a smile but not raising my glass. "It's fine, it's just the seat." Suzu's smile froze on her face and aggressively asked Ki Yuanzhou for help. "It seems like sister is still angry with me." Ki Yuanzhou stood up nonchalantly and picked up my wine glass, reaching out to hand it to my mouth. "Drink up." Like a demon whispering in my ear, his voice was full of threats. So many pairs of eyes were staring at me and him, I pursed my lips and slowly took the glass in his hand. A mouthful of muffled, strong wine into the throat, spicy raw pain, my stomach began to turn over. Applause under the seat, Suzu gazed at me with a smile. "Sister C amount." Her words did not finish. I have covered my mouth and flew away from the seat. Side of the sink, I washed away just vomit, finishing the mirror in a mess of their own, is out of lipstick makeup. Behind me, Ki Yuan Zhou stared straight at me. Can you, are you as far as that? I woodenly locked eyes with him. It's just one glass of wine, acting so soft, others don't know, am I still not clear about your drinking capacity? Make it look like Suzu bullied you. I'm telling you, stop playing these little tricks, we can still get by. Looking at Ki Yuan Zhou's huffy expression, I even wanted to laugh a little. So, he thought that the scene at the dinner table just now was pretending to vomit for others to see. He followed over, not to worry about me, but to warn me. Mr. Ki, it's not necessary you to pass. I put away my lipstick and prepared to leave. At the company's celebration banquet, as a big contributor who had just won a project, my cousin Suzu had no problem sitting in the main seat of the chairman's wife. It was already a bit late when I arrived, and there was only one empty seat left for me at the main table, right in the corner. A few employees secretly looked askance at me and covered their mouths in whispers. This is a celebration banquet that Ki Yuanzhou has organized specifically for Suzu, and I am considered uninvited. The banquet officially started. Lin Tian saw me sitting forlornly in the corner, and gouged out Suzu, and bluntly said, Mr. Qin, why are you sitting there? Lin Tian was the patriarch who followed me and Ki Yuanzhou to fight together back then. I know that he was dissatisfied with Suzu riding on my head. The clamoring crowd instantly quieted. Suzu looked at me with her eyebrows raised in surprise. Yeah, sis, I'm sorry, I thought you weren't coming, why don't we switch? Saying this, she slowly got up. Ki Yuanzhou pulled Suzu, and took out the faction of the boss. A seat is just a seat, where there is so much to care about. Just sit here. You are the main character today. When he said this, he didn't even bother to glance my way. Suzu smiled at me, her face almost blossoming. Sister, then I'll sit here and take care of brother-in-law for you. I nodded bashfully, so she still knew that it was her brother-in-law. During the meeting, Suzu was pouring soup and vegetables into Ki Yuanzhou's bowl, pouring tea and water for him, almost reaching her chopsticks into his mouth. After the atmosphere was in place, a group of employees under Suzu's hand attentively raised their glasses to toast to her. Suzu looked embarrassed, blushingly excused herself, and sorry guys, I can't drink right now. A week ago, she made a high-profile announcement in her circle of friends, 1 + 1 = 3. The accompanying picture was a photo of a man and a woman holding hands, and I recognized the man as Ki Yuanzhou without looking at his face. He used to fight with others for me and left a shallow scar on his little finger. That is the trace that he once loved me, and now it is also the proof that he does not love me. Zhao Su, she can't drink, let me toast everyone. Ki Yuanzhou's high-pitched voice pulled me back from my thoughts. He cheerfully dried a few glasses of wine for Suzu. Suzu pouted and leaned on his shoulder, her lips opening and closing up and down as she whispered in his ear. I don't know what was said, but the two of them silently looked at each other and smiled. Maybe I was the joke, with such a high-profile act on their part. I still sat here, calmly watching them. I could clearly feel the employees around me casting sympathetic and puzzled glances at me. Not to mention the others, I myself felt ridiculous. When I accompanied Ki Yuanzhou when he started his business, he was not a good drinker, the kind that blushes when he dips into alcohol. I held my breath and said that I was not drunk from 1,000 cups and held back the wine for him. A few years later, he practiced his drinking ability and began to hold back drinks for others. Perhaps because she saw that I was indifferent to their lovemaking, Suzu held her cup and stopped in front of me with a condescending pace. Sister, I sat in your seat today, and now I'm honoring you with water instead of wine, as a younger sister, making amends to you. She grinned and raised her cup towards me, saying it was an apology was more like a declaration of sovereignty. I glanced at her, lightly putting on a smile but not raising my glass. It's fine, it's just the seat. Suzu's smile froze on her face and aggressively asked Ki Yuanzhou for help. It seems like sister is still angry with me. Ki Yuan-jo stood up nonchalantly and picked up my wine glass, reaching out to hand it to my mouth. Drink up. Like a demon whispering in my ear, his voice was full of threats. So many pairs of eyes were staring at me and him, I pursed my lips and slowly took the glass in his hand. A mouthful of muffled, strong wine into the throat, spicy raw pain, my stomach began to turn over. Applause under the seat, Suzu gazed at me with a smile. Sister C amount. Her words did not finish, I have covered my mouth and flew away from the seat. Side of the sink, I washed away just vomit, finishing the mirror in a mess of their own, is out of lipstick makeup. Behind me, Ki Yuan-jo stared straight at me. Can you, are you as far as that? I woodenly locked eyes with him. It's just one glass of wine, acting so soft, others don't know, am I still not clear about your drinking capacity? Make it look like Suzu bullied you. I'm telling you, stop playing these little tricks, we can still get by. Looking at Ki Yuan-jo's huffy expression, I even wanted to laugh a little. So, he thought that the scene at the dinner table just now was pretending to vomit for others to see. He followed over, not to worry about me, but to warn me. Mr. Ki, it's not necessary you to pass. I put away my lipstick and prepared to walk away. Ki Yuan-jo yanked my arm from behind, his mouth perking up with words. Do you know that what I hate the most is your temper that loves to make a scene? I paused in my steps and turned my head to return his words. Ki Yuan-jo, do you know that what I hate the most is this self-righteous look of yours? After saying that, I walked away without looking back. I had known that Ki Yuan-jo and Suzu were getting together on our 5th wedding anniversary. I prepared a table of dishes at home and waited for him, and he said he wanted to help Suzu change the light bulb. The change lasted all night, and the next day, Suzu strutted into the office with him on her arm. That day, everyone was secretly observing my expression. Behind my back, the employees said that I was a ninja turtle, and that I could endure anything for the position of the chairman's wife. Yes, that's right, I used to care. But now, I sneer, I bitch care about this kind of people, I long fucking don't care. When I went out of the hotel door, I saw Zduan's black Volkswagen with double flash from afar. I just stepped out the door, he rolled down the window, waving excitedly at me. Sitting in the passenger seat, Zduan noticed something wrong in my demeanor. He idly hit the steering wheel. Did that pair of dogs embarrass you again? I have long advised you that you should not come. I didn't make a sound, closing my eyes and enjoying the stereo, my favorite song. At night, between sleepy, I received a call from Ki Yuan-jo. Where are you? I answered casually. Home. Ki Yuan-jo hadn't been back home for a long time, where I was didn't matter to him. Fuck you, you're stealing behind my back. I'm at home right now. Where the hell are you? Don't need you to care. I cut off the phone without hesitation. I purposely didn't explain and deliberately provoked him. Trash-like men, who fly the colorful flag outside themselves, but won't allow a bit of green on their heads. On what grounds? I waited until today, finally waited for the opportunity, the more angry he is or not, waiting for me to give him retribution. Ki Yuanzu's revenge, faster than I imagined. The next day at the company's regular meeting, he will be in my hands have been following up the project, transferred to Suzu. The reason is that I am not feeling well and should not exert myself. People who don't know, really think he is heartbroken wife. I have been following up this project with my team for more than a year, and in order to do a good job on it, I have exhausted my efforts. Those nights when Ki Yuan-jo and Suzu were intimate, my team and I stayed up all night and worked non-stop to do research and development. What do they have the right to do when it comes to the door? The team's main backbone cannot be angry, and Ki Yuan-jo argued on the spot. He directly dismissed the person with a piece of paper. Anyone can see that he is making an example of me behind the sword. This is no different from cutting my flesh and blood. Ki Yuan-jo even made a public order not to discuss this matter in the company. Lunchtime, Suzu in order to celebrate, a big wave of the whole company's lunch. I sat in the office to deal with some things, did not eat with them. Someone knocked on the door of my office, and I braced myself. Come in. It was Suzu. With her feet on fine heels and a face full of spring in her step, she entered the door. Sister, I but heard that you are so angry that you can't eat. Seeing that I didn't make a sound, she was even more furious. I'm not like my sister who can be so capricious. Saying that, she gently stroked her slightly bulging belly. I pointed at her pointed fine heels. Then you have to take it easy, in case the seed in your belly falls. Suzu immediately pulled down her face, interrupting me with a scathing look on her face. Don't you dare to yin and yang there. Don't look at yourself. Besides having an empty name, what else is there? If I were you, I'd sign the divorce before it's too late, and I'd still get a share of the benefits. I shrugged my shoulders and leaned back in my chair and laughed out loud. Suzu snorted coldly and slammed the door. Looking at Suzu's back, I coldly sympathized with her somewhat. In the beginning, I was the one who deliberately pushed her to Ki Yuan-zhou's side. I wonder if she will hate me when she learns the truth. However, it was time to give them a big gift. I had a lunch date with Zi Duan, and looking down from outside the window, he was waiting at the company entrance early. I made up a makeup, hurried downstairs to the appointment. The moment I sat on Zi dust passenger door closed, I glanced at the door of the building. Ki Yuan-zhou's gloomy face is looking at me angrily. I slammed the car door. I met Zi Duan on a project a year ago, and he was the representative of the other company. A brat who just graduated, he treated people politely and was humble and courteous when he and I butt heads. Later, slowly familiarized, I found that this kid is not pure in mind, looking at me as a married woman. I am ready to send a big gift, has not yet had time to send out. That night, Ki Yuan-zhou unprecedentedly returned home. I just opened the door and was hugged by him from behind, and I pushed him away. Since I knew that he cheated on me, looking at his face made me retch. I don't know if it was just a blur, but I actually saw a hint of loss on Ki Yuan-zhou's face. Zhao Yu, let's have a good chat. I threw my bag on the sofa. Say what you have to say. He kept pressing into me. I pushed back 2 steps to pull away. Just talk, don't be a grunt. Ki Yuan-zhou changed his face. Sure enough, finding a white boy is different, even the husband is not allowed to touch. Same to each other. I haven't lost in the area of ridiculing people. Zhao Yu, let's live well. Ki Yuan-zhou got serious, his tone became low, and his eyes were flooded with tears. I laughed. Put it here for me to play the return of the prodigal son? See, I do not make a sound. He in brute force hugged me, cannot be argued, can only indifferently by him. He lay on my shoulder whimpering and crying. Why don't you tell me? Tell you I have a boyfriend? Anyway, today he saw it with his own eyes. I was too lazy to explain anything. Although Zi Duan and I hadn't crossed the line, he had indeed been pursuing me. He let go of me and tearfully pulled out a diagnosis from his pocket. You have stomach cancer, why didn't you tell me? I froze. How did you know? Zhao Yu, I'm sorry. Without waiting for me to finish, he confessed in a loud voice. Earlier, I went to the hospital to see a stomach doctor. I did not expect the results came out to be stomach cancer. The night I received the news, I squatted helplessly in front of the hospital and broke down and cried. That day is Suzu's birthday, thought they will have a grand celebration banquet. I still give Ki Yuan-zhou call. But he never picked up. Just lightly returned a message, let me keep the good part. From that time, in my heart and Ki Yuan-zhou couple love has been broken. That night, I stayed in the office, did not go home. Compared to the cold empty shell that has long been without feelings, the office that has been struggling instead more let me have a sense of security. I think, should be that night missed in the office of the report. Today I went out to eat that moment, let Ki Yuan-zhou to find out. I was silent. This moment, I kinda want to know in front of this love for a few years of the man is really still care about me. Unexpectedly, in the next few months, Ki Yuan-zhou day to day to me, playing the role of a loving husband. He even deliberately distanced himself from Suzu and went home most of the time, and he respected my decision to sleep in a separate room. He was so nice to me that it was like going back to the time when I first fell in love. Unfortunately, I don't eat this anymore. Suzu in the company also do not make a demon to me, act low-key a lot. See me are far away from avoiding, but all have me in the meeting, she also try not to show her face. However, I believe that there must be a demon when things go wrong. Ki Yuanzu's change of heart, and Suzu's patience, even let me vaguely uneasy. Sure enough, watching Suzu's belly grow, Ki Yuanzhou finally could not hold back. That day to go home, the sky is drizzling, get off the Ki Yuanzhou in front of the house stopped in his footsteps. I looked back at him, his eyebrows knitted, seems to have something to say. A gust of wind blew by, I tightened my blouse. There is something to come in and say. Ki Yuanzhou was still in place, and after a few seconds, he plopped down and knelt in front of me. Zhao Yu, I'm sorry, let's divorce. The child in Suzu's belly needs an identity. Just make us whole. Oh, all these months of being nice to me are just to pave the way for today, right? Trying to play the emotional card with me? But do I still have feelings for him? The wind whistled on my face, I endured the coldness in my body and gently nodded. Okay. Perhaps I agreed too quickly. Ki Yuanzhou suddenly got up from the ground and rushed over to me with a surprised face. Zhao Yu, you! He gasped in excitement, not hiding the excitement on his face. After the divorce, we are still a family, don't worry, I won't leave you alone. He was still saying something, I had already turned around and entered the house. Years ago, when Ki Yuanzhou proposed to me, he also knelt with the same devotion, only that day the sun was shining, unlike today when it was cloudy and rainy. He swore that he would take care of me for the rest of my life, and I was moved to tears. In the living room, I was discussing the division of property with Ki Yuanzhou, his cell phone rang. Suzu's impatient voice came from the phone. How is it? Is it done? Does she not agree? Ki Yuanzhou looked up at me in embarrassment and said quietly toward the phone again. Don't be in a hurry. I got up and went to the kitchen to get a cup of cool water, gulped it down, trying to suppress the fire in my heart. When I returned to the living room again, Ki Yuanzhou had already hung up the phone in a hurry. Zhao Yu, back when I started my business, you gave me sponsorship, now I'm returning 20% of your shares. Ki Yuanzhou placed a divorce agreement, solemnly in front of me. Now that you have cancer, it's just right to sell these shares and be able to exchange them for money to cure your illness. I took the agreement and laughed out softly. Back then, I contributed the capital to accompany him to start his business, and most of the business was also negotiated by me. Later, when the company went public, I didn't even ask for a share of the equity. Now, he even thinks that 20% is a generous subsidy to me? His complexion suddenly changed, and he raised his voice. This 20% of the shares, you still think it's too little? After so many years, I don't owe you anything. It is true that when people are anxious, nothing can be hidden on their faces, and Ki Yuanzu's face, which was soft just now, all of a sudden flared up. Of course, he would not remember that I had drank until my stomach bled several times in order to fight for a project. In order to talk about a business, I was in the morning in the Northeast, squatting in front of someone else's company waiting for an hour or two, eyelashes are frozen out of ice flowers. He does not owe me anything, because these should have belonged to me. I picked up the pen and sharply signed the agreement. Okay, see you tomorrow at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Ki Yuanzhou saw me sign and sighed in relief, snickering. Zhao Yu, I didn't realize that your favorite thing is still the love of money. Otherwise? Keeping a man who doesn't come home even when his wife has cancer. I gave him a contemptuous look and my mouth was nonchalant. Perhaps it was because he thought that he hadn't gotten the divorce certificate yet. Ki Yuanzhou immediately switched to a humble face again. Zhao Yu, I'm sorry, it's just that Suzu and their mother and son need me more. In the future, as long as you need it, I can still take care of you. Without a word, I went into the bedroom and unlocked the door. That fake and benevolent look was disgusting. The next day, we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to do the relevant procedures. Watching 20% of the shares transferred to my name, my hanging heart finally fell. A month later, Ki-Yuan-jo and I officially received a divorce certificate. As he expected, I sold the 20% of shares he transferred to me. On the day of the license, Suzu and Ki-Yuan-jo appeared together in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Suzu is carrying a big belly, and it looks like the baby is about to land. I can't wait to give them a big gift. Ki-Yuan-jo and I got the license and went out. Taking advantage of the moment when Ki-Yuan-jo went to drive, Suzu straightened her body and condescendingly said to me, "Sister, don't blame me. Blame yourself for being a sick chicken that can't lay eggs." I couldn't stand it any longer and slapped her with my hand. "Your mom didn't teach you how to behave. I'll teach you well today." It seems that these months of fitness still had some results. Suzu's face was immediately flooded with a bright red palm print. She went crazy and pounced on me, but she was carrying a big belly. Where is my opponent? There was only one way to go crazy in the doorway, trying to draw the attention of the people around her. "Scream louder, better call everyone here, let them see your mistress' face." I clasped my hands to my chest and looked at her breezily. It's all come to this, a bit of face I don't want to leave for her. She gouged me out fiercely, her nostrils exhaling gusts of thick air, looking like she was furious enough. "Can you wait for me?" In the afternoon, I had just stepped into the door of the company with my front foot, and the personnel notified me that I had been dismissed with my back foot. And Suzu immediately replaced me and sat as the company's vice president. This pair of dog couple really can't wait to see me die. Anger straight to the head, I went straight to Ki-Yuan-zu's office, want a statement. As a result, the secretary told me that he had gone out on an errand. Hey, just entered the door, I also saw him in love with Suzu. It seems that this affection is half a point do not have to stay. I turned my head to Duan made a phone call. The show is about to begin. While packing up her things, Suzu appeared at the office door, her hands holding her waist from behind, arrogant. "Vice President Kin, oh yeah, I'm the vice president now. Can you? I told you earlier, isn't it good to take the money peacefully and wait for death? Now that everything is gone, how dare you fight me?" After saying that, she rushed towards me and raised her hand to slap me. With a sidestep, I pulled her hand and backhanded her another slap, just as the two palm prints aligned. "Dare or not, it's not up to you." Looking at Suzu's reddened face, I couldn't help but taunt her. "Finally a bit of a snowman." Suzu collapsed and shouted loudly, calling out to the security guards, calling out to her co-workers. Even Ki-Yuan-jo, who was hiding from seeing me, rushed from his office and shouted at me, shouting, "Can you shrew?" The fuse that had been buried for so long was finally ignited and was about to explode today. Ki-Yuan-jo protected Suzu behind him and ordered a few security guards to clamp me down. But several security guards, you look at me, I look at you, did not immediately move. When I was a vice president, I expressed my concern and sympathy for the employees under their hands every now and then. On the contrary, Ki-Yuan-jo cannot even call people's last name. I laughed. "Ki-Yuan-jo, do you know that a company's greatest fear is losing people's hearts?" He raised his condescending head with a face of disdain and contempt. "Can you stay out of the company's business? You've been fired now." Quite a few employees had already rushed to gather around at just the right time. I scolded him loudly. "Ki-Yuan-jo, what about the wages that you harshly deducted from your employees' heads over the past few years in order to fill the pit that Suzu lost?" Before the words fell, the employees were in an uproar. The company has a period of time many employees have been inexplicably deducted from the commission. The employees are outraged. You spit blood." Suzu was so agitated that she wanted to rush up and hit me. I raised my hands to show my innocence. "All of you here give me a witness." Suzu's wild seed in her belly fell off. "It has nothing to do with me." The surrounding people began to snicker. Suzu since climbed on the Ki Yuan-jo, in the company domineering habitual, early people see her upset. Now that personal interests are involved, it is natural to look at her even more unfavorably. Ki Yuan-jo saw the situation get out of control, quickly pulled Suzu. Fuming at the crowd of security guards, he shouted, "Do you still want to do your job? Give me this crazy woman to drive out of the company. Whoever doesn't do it today will be fired." A few security guards sniffed and looked at each other in disbelief, and had no choice but to close in on me. In the crowd, a man in a black suit with a thick stack of agreements in his hand stood out. I have to say, Zidwan, this kid stood in the crowd, and just by virtue of his 1880 height, he killed the crowd. I really didn't look at the wrong person. Not only is he handsome, his efficiency is also extremely high. I'll see who dares to make a move against the newly appointed president. Ki Yuan-jo was visibly stunned, and a pleasing look appeared on his face again. "Mr. Z, what are you doing?" "Mr. Z." Zidwan looked at Ki Yuan-jo and skipped over him, walking straight towards me and handing me the agreement. "Congratulations, Mr. Qin, on his appointment." I smiled faintly, and then rushed towards the confused crowd. "Everyone, today I officially take over the Yuan Yu group." Before the crowd could react, Suzu burst into laughter first. "Qin Yu, just by you? Taking over Yuan Yu? Are you daydreaming?" I threw the share transfer agreement in my hand to her. "Look carefully, I now hold 90% of the company's shares." Suzu held her stomach and snorted. "Hey, you're crazy, right? How can you write your own agreement? What a joke." I raised my hand and questioned her in front of the employees. "Do you still remember the project you took from me a year ago?" Suzu had a vain look on her face, not daring to look at me. "It seems you still remember you lost that project. Then do you know how many shares Ki Yuan-jo sold to help you fill the hole? And how much was lost in the first few months, in the few projects that were snatched from my hands? Don't you have any idea in your heart?" In the face of my questioning, Suzu started babbling while hurriedly pushing me out. "So what if I lost money? This is my and Yuan-jo's company. It's not your turn as an outsider to point fingers here. Get lost." It seems she still cares about her image in front of her employees. I laughed. Only junior high school dropout diploma Suzu. With Ki Yuan-jo, this back door climbed all the way to the position of project director. It would be strange if the company wasn't brought down by her. I turned my head to glare at Ki Yuan-jo. "It's hard for you to sell your shares to buy a school district house for your unborn child. Now in your hand, how many shares are left?" Ki Yuan-jo gritted his teeth and looked at me. "You! Truly the most poisonous woman's heart." Looking at his face that was hideously twisted and full of ruthlessness, I smiled. The reason why Suzu was able to hook up with Ki Yuan-jo was carefully designed by me. 2 years ago, I found a lipstick in Ki Yuan-jo's car. The bright color was so red that my heart trembled, and I couldn't believe the fact that I had been betrayed. I cried and threatened with divorce. Ki Yuan-jo bowed to me on the surface and admitted his mistake, but locally he was still dead serious. Soon, he had a new man. After countless nights of tears, I finally accepted the fact that my heart was fed to the dogs. I looked for a private detective and decided to collect evidence of Ki Yuan-jo's derailment, and to my surprise, I dug a more brutal conspiracy. He is step by step hollowing out my rights in the company. When I met Ki Yuan-jo, he was still a poor boy with an empty ambition. Despite the opposition of my parents, I took out my savings to fully support him, and together we went through those tortuous years. Pillow person betrayal certainly left my heart broken, but looked at me with a disease to spell the company was taken away. Undoubtedly in my heart fired a shot. This shot shattered all my feelings for him. Ki Yuan-jo all the way to enjoy, he is not clear, the company for me, what it means. Since then, I had a plan in mind, a plan to make Ki Yuan-jo lose his reputation and everything. The accident of this plan is Suzu. I have been planning a suitable candidate. I was surprised to find Suzu eyeing Ki Yuan-jo at a family gathering. Her look of anxious to climb into a man's bed is undoubtedly my best candidate. Suzu's family grew up in general, did not read a lot of books. The brain is full of female competition that point. Unfortunately, she is not too smart. However, is a very good use of tools. I found an opportunity to transfer Suzu into the company, and arranged for her to become his secretary beside Ki Yuan-jo. Sure enough, Suzu did not let me down, and soon, she hooked up with Ki Yuan-jo. I pretended to be hollowed out. In fact, behind the scenes early outside the establishment of their own small companies, has been in the hands of Suzu and Suzu's project against the stage. If you know your enemy and know yourself, you can win 100 battles. Suzu lost money, Ki Yuan-jo in order to save face, sell shares, to help her fill the gap. Unbeknownst to me, the money that was lost went into my pocket. And with the help of Suzu's incompetence, I took down one project after another. Now my own company, in just 2 years, has long expanded several times the scale of operation. With that money, I have acquired a lot of Far East Group's loose shares. In order to cover my tracks, most of the shares have been transferred to Zi Duan through a number of hands. Today, Zi Chen officially transferred these shares to me. I hold 90% of the shares and have become a director of Yuan Yu Group. And Ki Yuan-zu's hands, only 10% left. Ki Yuan-jo rushed up and tried to hit me, but was kicked away by Zi Chen. In the name of the chairman of the board, I fired Ki Yuan-jo and Suzu on the spot. Suzu, with a big belly, knelt on the ground and begged me, crying, "Sister! Please! We were wrong. You let us live." Ki Yuan-jo kept helping her up. It seems that these two are really a couple. "Zuer, you don't need to beg her. I still have 10% of the shares in my hand. She has no right to fire me." I laughed again. "Ki Yuan-jo, you don't think that the money you spent on false accounts to fill Suzu's hole, as well as the money you spent on buying houses for those mistresses, all fell from the sky, right? I am now formally charging you with misappropriation of public funds." As soon as she heard Junior and Junior 4, Suzu's face changed drastically, and she shouted at Ki Yuan-jo, shouting, "Ki Yuan-jo! You tell me clearly. Where is the little 3, little 4? Didn't you say that you only love me? You heartless thing." Suzu lost her mind and punched and kicked Ki Yuan-jo. Ki Yuan-jo calmed her down while scolding me. "Can you poisonous woman, don't try to destroy our relationship." I threw out a petal of photos that were densely packed with evidence of Ki Yuan-jo's cheating. Suzu picked up the photos and looked at them for a few moments, and frantically pounced on the finance who was watching. Li Finance is precisely the object of Ki Yuan-zu's cheating in the company, but unfortunately, in the end, she does not know that she helped Ki Yuan-jo in the crime. At this time, Suzu was already clawing at Finance Li regardless. Ki Yuan-jo was busy going up and pulling the two. "Zuer, be careful of the child in your belly." Suzu stopped her hand movements at the sound of the voice, and her entire body calmed down. Speaking of children, I still have a big gift to give to Ki Yuan-jo. I found out that year's medical report and threw it to Ki Yuan-jo. After he read it, he first froze and then started laughing madly. It looked like he was bewitched. After 2 years of marriage with Ki Yuan-jo, I have not yet conceived a child. We went for a medical checkup together, and Ki Yuan-jo was found to have amblyopia. I was stunned when I got the medical report and complained about God's injustice. Thinking about it now, I was really an unenlightened love brain at that time. Thinking that as long as I live happily with him, even if I don't want children in this life, I can still live. So I chose to hide the fact that this hurt his self-esteem, stupidly bear everything. Have been carrying the curse of not being able to have a child for him. Ki Yuan-jo turned to Suzu's stomach and stared at the fuming for a long time, then he began to go crazy. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he cut his teeth in anger. He first gave Suzu a heavy slap. Suzu grazed and fell to the ground, covering her face and screaming, "Ki Yuan-jo, you're crazy!" When she reacted, Ki Yuan-jo gave her a few more hard kicks on her belly. "Laozi lost the whole company for you, you put a hat on Laozi." The security guards on the side rushed up to stop them. Ki Yuan-zhou completely reddened his eyes and pushed the security guard away, all the time raining down hard kicks on Suzu's stomach. He finally felt the taste of being betrayed. Along with Suzu's cries, a large amount of blood flowed down her leg. Like the lipstick I found in Ki Yuan's boat car back then, it was colorful and blinding. Those pains of mine that were buried in my bones were finally released at this moment. I watched everything with cold eyes. Z, dust on the side, chose to call the police. The police arrived and subdued Ki Yuan-zhou, who had long been out of control. Before leaving, he stared at me with a deadly stare and spat out a few words through his teeth. "Can you? I really underestimated you." I smiled coldly and turned around to sit in his former chairman's office. Suzu was sent to the hospital, the one in her stomach was not saved, and the person almost died due to hemorrhaging. Fortunately, the rescue was timely, but because of the 8-month miscarriage, the damage is too great and can never have a child in the future. The words she cursed me with were finally retributed on her head. After being discharged from the hospital, she also faced a legal trial. Ki Yuan-zhou was charged with intentional injury, as well as misappropriation of public funds. For the rest of his life, it was estimated that he would always be able to eat prison food. After he was incarcerated, I went to see him once. I told him that I took the position he once held, and drove out the minions who stood by him and Suzu. I merged the group into a company under my own name, and now my career is flourishing and I have become a famous businesswoman. Ki Yuan-zhou looked at me blankly from the other end of the glass, with a complex expression. After a long time, he slowly spoke. Thank you for telling me this, but I don't hate you. All these years, it's me who's sorry for you. By the way, are you feeling better? In fact, I didn't have stomach cancer at all. That time it was the doctor who mixed up the diagnostic reports and informed me the next day. It just so happened that Ki Yuan-zhou saw the wrong copy of the report. I never explained it to him, and it was no longer necessary. I put down the handset. For Ki Yuan-zhou, I can't talk about forgiveness, but I don't need this belated deep love either. Undeniably, it is he who molded me today. In the business world, I am decisive, see the right time to hit hard, relying on ruthlessness in the shopping mall to spell out a piece of heaven and earth. Can you, really calling the shots? This was the exclamation he made to me after I took down a project against my family, Ziduan. After that day, I realized that Dust was the eldest son of the famous tycoon Zi Yunlong. I was grateful to Ziduan for helping me so much. His looks were also really to my liking, and I agreed to his advances, but that didn't mean I would go soft on him in the business world. Of course, this does not hinder the feelings between Zi Chen and me. I've asked him. You've seen me so cruel to Ki Yuan-zhou, would you be afraid? Ziduan shook his head and asked me in return. I didn't cheat on him, so what am I afraid of? Sure enough, coming from a wealthy family, he has seen the wind and waves. Ziduan gave me a sense of security in my relationship and absolute freedom and support in my career. But he was currently still in my inspection period. After all, after experiencing a bone-crushing marriage, I have long since burned out my relationship brain. Looking at my business map, the future is promising. Men are just spices.